patrons and subscribers. This is Random Rob. Welcome back to the new show. So I wanted to start today first apologizing for the sound of the air conditioning. I hope it's not too loud. It's just too damn hot today. And I also wanted to talk for a minute about my process when I do these episodes, which is that I don't have a process. Usually on a day I have to shoot video, I wake up with an inspiration for what I want to talk about and go from there. Today, for example, I woke up and planned to talk about the movie The 13th Floor from 1999. Then I started rewatching it and realized there just wasn't enough to talk about with that film to make it worth recommending. So I decided to cover a film today that I've been meaning to talk about for a while, The Dawn of the Dead from 1978 by George Romero. And this was a very hard new show to limit the discussion to 5 things, but I've done my best, and I hope you appreciate it. How do I even start talking about a film like Dawn of the Dead? Well, the first thing I need to do is make a confession. I didn't watch this film till I was in my 40s, believe it or not. Dawn was a movie that came out when I was 10. There was no way I would have been able to see it in theaters at the time. So there was the age problem. There was also the issue of seeing photographs of gore in the movie, in Fangoria and Famous Monsters, and being absolutely horrified at how brutal it looked. And I thought I would never be able to make it through such a film until I got a bit older. But hindsight is 20/20, and I have to admit, I'm actually glad I waited till I was an adult to see this movie, because I think I ended up appreciating it as a film a lot more than I would have if I had seen it as a teenager. And as an adult lover of science fiction and horror, I can definitely say this is one of my most important films of the 1970s. A really significant piece of cinema. There's a bare handful of movies that I can effortlessly rewatch over and over again, and Dawn of the Dead is one of them. So, having given Dawn a fresh rewatch, here are my 5 things to know about Dawn of the Dead 1978. Number 1, an indie film like no other. It's almost impossible to overstate what an important indie film Dawn of the Dead was. Although its initial budget was reported to international investors at about $1.5 million, it's been revealed that this figure was padded, and that Dawn of the Dead actually cost about $500,000 to make. A film that then went on to make $66 million at the box office. It's also impossible to overstate what a labor of love Dawn of the Dead was. From all the local extras in Pittsburgh who showed up at the Monroeville Mall to be a zombie for a day, being paid $1 and a donut, and getting a free Dawn of the Dead t-shirt as payment. It seemed like everybody who was involved with this film wanted to contribute something special to it. Whether it was legendary makeup man Tom Savini constantly improvising zombie makeups and practical effects, and doing many of the stunts in the film, one of which, his dive off the balcony, went badly when he missed the boxes he was supposed to land on and ended up really banging up his legs and back. Or there's the scene where the heroes are flying over the countryside in the helicopter and see the National Guard and hunters taking down zombies. The local National Guard showed up to be in the film. So did the hunters. Most of them working for free just for a chance to be in the film. The same as the biker gang, the Pagans, who show up at the end of the film riding their own motorcycles, some of them doing their own stunts. Or all the extras in the SWAT team sequence that was shot in the projects. George Romero was the kind of director who liked to work by committee, where the committee was the whole crew. He had a script, but that didn't stop him from listening to the actors when they had an idea for how to do something. Even having use of the Monroeville Mall was a favor that Romero got from his friend Mark Mason, who had toured him through the building when it was first completed. It's just amazing to me to think that a film with a budget of $500,000 had so much love and support from everybody who worked on it. It's just a remarkable achievement. Number 2, help from Dario Argento. Without Dario Argento, Dawn of the Dead would never have been made. Romero had had no luck getting American investors interested, but Argento was a strong supporter of Romero's work, especially Night of the Living Dead, which he had helped get recognized as an important film overseas. Argento actually invited Romero to come over to Rome so that he could write the script for Dawn in a beautiful location where he wouldn't have any distractions. And as Romero worked on the script, managed to start securing European funding. Argento also secured the prog rock band Goblin to do the soundtrack, and in exchange for his help, Romero agreed to let Argento make his own cut of the film for the European market. I have never seen the international cut, by the way. I know it's a little longer. I know most of the humor is cut out of it, and it features all of the soundtrack that Goblin did. And that was just one of many cuts done of Dawn. Apparently there's a dozen or so out there. I don't know if anyone has ever gathered them all together to compare them, but that I think would be pretty cool. Number 3, the ending that wasn't. The script for Dawn of the Dead was originally going to have Peter running out of ammo and being massacred by the zombies in the room where they've holed up. Fran was going to go to the roof, start the helicopter, and end up sticking her head in the blades, in a callback to the earlier head chopping scene. And though Romero denied it for years, they actually did shoot these scenes, except for the effects shot. The interesting detail here is that the dummy that was going to be used for Fran's decapitation ends up in the beginning of the film as the man in the apartment who Wooly shoots with a shotgun. If you freeze frame right before the headshot, you can clearly see that it was supposed to be a woman's face, that they added a mustache and goatee to. It was probably best they went for the lighter ending. I'm not sure Dawn would be remembered the same way today if it had had such a bleak ending. Number 4, it's Fran's story. I don't know if this is a controversial opinion or not. When I watch Dawn of the Dead, I notice that Fran is the one character who really has a solid arc. She's the character who seems like a fish out of water at the beginning, but by the end has learned to defend herself, learned to shoot, learns to pilot the helicopter, and unlike the male characters, is the one who seems to have to deal more with her own feelings of disillusionment and learning to accept the reality of the situation they're in. And it's important to note that her arc grew out of Galen Ross fighting with George Romero about how to play her character. She famously refused to scream in an early scene at the abandoned airfield. Romero told her to scream and she said, "No, I'm not going to do this. This character wouldn't do this." Even more interesting considering that she was one of the most inexperienced actors on the shoot. She had apparently lied like hell on her resume to get the gig. Among other things she had mentioned was that she knew how to ice skate, which she actually didn't. So there's a scene in Dawn where she's in the ice skating rink at the mall doing a couple of turns, and apparently that was the only bit of footage they got of her before she fell on her face. Romero later commented that he wouldn't have cared what her experience was. So I think that's kind of cool how the one character actor in the film who had the least amount of impact on the page would be the one who would turn her role into something bigger, and that this was something Romero encouraged. And number 5, the mall is a metaphor. Romero has said in interviews that he never meant the movie's commentary on consumerism to be subtext. He always intended it to be right up front. The idea that having a surplus of consumer goods all to yourself was an end in itself, and ultimately reflecting on the emptiness of that concept and the impracticality of it. When I watch Dawn of the Dead, I don't think so much of the attack by the bikers at the end as a random event. To me, it's something that's fated in the situation itself. If you're hoarding things, you have more than you need, there is always going to be someone who is going to come along and try to take it away from you. And it's to the credit of the film that it's able to make that point without ever actually talking about it. Would I recommend Dawn of the Dead? God, yes. It's just a masterclass in storytelling and indie filmmaking. Even today, I think it shows how much you can do as long as you have plenty of coverage and really good editing. Romero said something to the effect that as long as you have static shots, you can create the movement with the editing. Whereas anytime you try to edit together moving camera shots, it becomes much harder to sync up those elements in editing so that they have fluidity. And I think there's a lot to be said for that approach to filming. So much of Dawn of the Dead moves at a breakneck speed without any shaky handheld camera work. And something that irritates me that you hear from reviewers regarding this film is that you couldn't make a film like Dawn of the Dead today because of changes in the industry, I guess. And my question to that would be, why not? I mean, sure, there have been big budget horror films over the years that have done very well and made a lasting impression. But for every one of those, it seems, there's also a film like Halloween or Dawn of the Dead that do the impossible with a minuscule budget and drive the whole genre forward. I'm not sure horror can move forward and evolve as a genre without indie films. I think they can be made today, and I think more than ever they need to be. And to comment on the time we live in and shake us out of our complacency. That to me is what Dawn of the Dead does and continues to do. So what are your thoughts about Dawn of the Dead and George Romero and his other films? Let me know in the comments below. And if you liked what you heard, please press the like button and subscribe, and consider becoming a patron of the new show. I could use your help. Alright, this is Random Rob for the new show, signing off. Be excellent, and take care. The new show is made possible by generous support from viewers like Tony, Arnell, Skipnick, Christopher, Marion, Eric, and B. Thank you so much for your support.